you can start to learn a lot. And I don't know how many of you have actually are familiar with all these products and are using them. Aha, 1, 2, shady, 3. Okay, so not that many. Okay, a few. So here's our good old Sentinel. And as you can see, we have a story up here in the right-hand side, which is usually the main story of the day. And it's about the international news and the war. The same thing down here, you see something in Kentucky, somebody died in the war. Then across above the fold here, you see that fire, that terrible fire in Capitola where someone died. Then you get a little bit of the story about how that happened. And then we have an AP story. Again, we're back in New Jersey. So, Tom, I think this is continuing a tradition with what you would do in the Sentinel, where you had a balance of local.
Oh yeah, I think we've gone through that before, where generally the Sentinel is in those days might have been, from most of the people in Santa Cruz, the only paper they took. They might take the Mercury News as well. So we had our goal, I think, was to be about 3/5 local, and then the rest of the wire news of the day. We would typically, page 1 was devoted to the best local news. Of course, then some days, as Obama said, nothing's happening in town, and your only choice is to say put some treasurer candidate story on page 1, which could happen. But so we always envisioned a general audience, and that, I think, is what we're finding out now, is that is really hard to achieve and hard to find.
Yeah, and then on Santa Cruz Local, I don't know how many people are. Okay, the hand goes right up. A couple folks. Kara.
Yeah, Kara. Kara is. She was actually Sentinel managing editor, and she's a very serious-minded young woman who wanted to do very in-depth news. And her site is really interesting. It's for the people who want to find out exactly what is the real cost going to be. She wants to find out what are the costs of what's happening downtown. What building is this? What building is that?
More candidates set to run as filing deadline passes, and we're
very politically
Santa Cruz.
And if you want your content, you want to really know the arguments pro and con. She and her staff do a very good job. They exist on donations, really, and she is out fundraising all the time, and it pays off. She's very serious-minded. It's very serious news. And from everything that I've ever used it for, I've gotten a lot of good information that I trust.
Yeah, and again, every one of these, I won't read down the list, but I encourage you to look at her website, and you'll see it's all local stories. The Lookout, actually what was interesting is here, she was covering the Santa Cruz Council could pave the way for Coral Street housing. So that's her fourth bullet. And it was the kind of a lead story in terms of the top of the scroll for Lookout. So, and if you kept scrolling down, you'd see a lot of other local stories as well as the restaurant features. And you might see some evergreen, I guess I call them evergreen stories, that maybe they've been there on the site for a few weeks or longer. But anyway, it does seem content rich. And then television, KSPW. I actually, full disclosure, I had scrolled down a bit to find the news because they always lead with the weather now. That's kind of their baby, and I love their weather. But you can see that, and also they are more South County, I think, Tom, a little bit, and
yeah. I think they just try to get everything covered. We were in LA last weekend and driving down as we were heading toward King City. I said, poor Felix.
Felix.
Driving. Yeah, I mean, every day he's in Boulder Creek, and then the next day he's in King City, and I think, but that's crazy. KSPW deserves credit because they actually get you to understand there are a few things happening wrong. They've got way too big a territory. And poor Felix is going to be ground down, I think, pretty soon.
And there's our newsletter. And actually, the Sentinel has a newsletter format too. If you subscribe, you'll get an email summarizing the highlight stories, and then it encourages encourages you to click in. But newsletters are a more common way now to get that delivered right to your email. KSBW, I actually subscribe to their app, and I get reminders all day about what's going on with the news. Okay, so
Where are we at?
Where are we at? So I did want to just take a moment to see which of these products you all get, and through what kind of device are you seeing them, or are you still in the print world?
I check all the time. I used to subscribe to X on Twitter, because you could really find out if you're a fire truck, someone would be posting what was happening. And of course, I will not do that. So there's another one called Threads, which is still, I think it's still my Google. But man, I find out more stuff. Just I click on it and find out what's happening with the war. But I have to always check those fake stuff going on. You just have to scroll down to find out. But you can listen. They always have. I listen to Trump talking. I hear. I know what he's saying. I listen to Canadian leader talking. You know, so I love it.
Yes.
She loves the options and saying she loves the options that she has, and she goes all over the place on the web. And
so you're actively looking at all kinds of sources. You're a kid in a candy.
Yeah, you know, it's in my case, I kind of find myself doubting a lot of what I read, and I just want confirmation from elsewhere. And the other thing that this just popped into my mind: headlines. We wrote in the newspaper, you write a headline so people will read the story. In the internet world, you read a headline because then they make you go find out what the hell are they saying. You click on it, it's total clickbait. And it's a headline, it's a skill of writing headlines that's very different from anything I was ever used to. Because I tried to write a headline that actually went with the story.
I mean, one of my sons was doing something in listicles, the top 10 things of fill in the blank. That's actually clickbait. Right away, it's clickbait. Okay. And so we also wanted to just contextualize each of these news products in terms of their news cycle, as far as we could detect. And again, if we've gotten it wrong here, let us know. But from what I could tell, the KSBW and the radio are pretty much 24 hours a day, most of them. Like a week that Capitola fire.
Yeah, I was actually, when I heard about the Capitola fire, I got a bulletin from somewhere or a notice on my phone during the night. The next morning, there wasn't a word of it anywhere. I couldn't find anything on it until about 11 o'clock. That surprised me a bit.
That was just, I think it was KSBW who got our notification.
So can I just?
Yeah, sure.
It's very interesting that I have a friend now. This is not me, but a friend who has an app that tells every single little detailed thing that is happening currently in the community.
Oh God.
And where?
In the community. So what I just I heard a siren go up on Mission Street. You know what's going on, and she has an app that says, they have reporting of
multimillionaires created a scanner app. He's a multimillionaire kid. I think he lives in Florida, and I love that thing. I mean, it's just, that was one of the, we just, again, a little throwback to the old times. That was actually one of my favorite elements of being in a newsroom, is that the scanner was always going. And the photons, of course, you rely on that stuff because you got to see where do we have to head for some kind of breaking news. So it's neat. Yeah. Yeah.
In February, as a general Ollie meeting, we had Ben Storm, who's a professor at the University who studies memory. And he is particularly interested in the impact of technology on our ability to lay down long-term memory. Mm-hmm. And there is research is showing that there is a decided decline in the amount of long-term memory because we think that we don't have to deeply study anything to find out what's happening. We can go quick and get it, and that satisfies us. I'm curious about such and such. I go online, I get the answer, and then I go away. It's not in here anymore. And the impact on that is that when we make a judgment about an issue, we bring all the things that we've learned throughout our lives to that. And if there is a decline in the amount of stuff that we're retaining, there is a significant question about whether the silo effect of getting only the news, the current headline that supports you, will help you make the judgment. It may not be the best.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, yeah.
Going back to your app, what is the name of that app?
The Clean SCW app? Oh, the scanner. It's called Police Scanner. So if you go to the App Store and you search on Police Scanners, and then you can subscribe to the local agencies.
I don't care because I have no need to be the first person to know everything, but no, there is.
You have a question back. I have a question back.
I do. After morning, I go to YouTube and I go to Democracy Now! Immediately. I listen to Amy Goodman every morning. That's the very first thing I do. And then I go to YouTube during the day and I do that. I look at the headlines and then I decide which ones I will read or not read. And I use.
How do you make that decision? How do you make that decision?
Whatever. It's a good time. I read all the local stuff cover to cover. I just really feel like I keep in touch. What's going on? Still, I feel very uninformed a lot of times. But I feel that YouTube offers me. SNL is a perfect example. I hate 90% of SNL, but I'll go on Sunday morning and listen to Colin Jost and Shay. So I am very particular about what I listen to.
Yeah.
So nothing else.
Yeah, sometimes you can talk more about this next week, like how you create your media diet. So your question, you were sharing that you have you think a pretty healthy media diet right now. You have good times cover to cover, so you're reading, and that might be helping your long-term memory and your deep understanding. And then you go to YouTube, and you will go to Democracy Now! And anyway, you're feeling like you have a lot of rich options.
But you also feel like you don't know enough.
Oh, yes, that's true too. Yeah.
Okay.
So anyway, I think we don't need to belabor this slide too much, but you all know that there's a rhythm to the news, and also there's a little bit of a trade-off where when you first get that almost like scanner report, that's the point of least knowledge of what actually is going on, right? And then over time, you get more and more and more, and so you're more likely to have a more solid first draft of history if you're in a daily or a weekly.
Well, let me give you an example. When I was first year at the Sentinel, there was a bank robbery out on 41st Avenue, and the guy who told me about it, I called up to the bank, and he was a junior guy in the bank, and he said, what was interesting is our president of the bank was in line when the robbery happened, and so I typed that up, and I turned it in, and my editor, being a good editor, came back and he said, the president was in line at the bank. And I said, well, yeah, that's what he told me. He said, check that out. And of course, it wasn't true. My reaction was another great story ruined by over-verification.
Yeah.
But that always happens on any police case or anything. That's the trouble with round-the-clock news is a lot of wrong stuff comes out at the beginning of any case. And we had the luxury of having a few hours to check something out. And I still kind of do that when I get the bulletin. I just don't quite make a judgment that it's for sure.
Yeah.
Louise, can you see the chat? There's a question from Sue Robb.
Yeah. Check it out. I'm not seeing the question. I am not seeing the What is the question?
Well, I think she's listing the,
She's
where she gets her news, sharing it, so yeah.
She looks at the Santa Cruz Sentinel, both print and online, journal print, the Washington Post online, New York Times online, Post online, Lookout online, Nextdoor, KSBW online, and some podcasts. Although I am only hearing their opinion, and I find local radio is not good. Oops. Okay. So anyway, thank you. So yeah, we know we're among media types here today. So we're going to try this, and we're through this. So Tom, we wanted you to start on this issue. Has anyone heard of this thing called the builder's remedy?
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
Okay. So we're going to look at this issue, and we're going to compare how it was covered and how we got information about it, just to give you again a deeper dive.
Let me explain something. Okay. This is an article. I'm not particularly interested in this subject myself, but this is a typical turn of the wheel story that happens when there are issues out there: building, permit approvals, water access, all these different things. Here's a story I just happened to pick up from the Santa Cruz Sentinel, and what I decided is that I was going to read it as in depth. I wasn't going to do, which most people do, which is read the first paragraph and then go on to the next page. And I'm going to read this to you.
Should we read the headline, Tom?
Let me just read the story.
Okay.
Despite warnings about the potential for a legal consequence down the road, Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors will ask state housing officials to clarify key details about its compliance with housing code as they continue to push back against controversial projects that previously qualified for streamlined development. Do you know what that's about? Anybody?
How many people understand that?
Yeah, it's a little confusing. Now, I bring this up because this is a story that I've had to edit a zillion times, where I know there's action. I know the Board of Supervisors did something, but damn it, I don't remember what this law study is about. So the next paragraph, it says, by way of a 4-1 vote at its meeting Tuesday, the board agreed to send a letter to the Director of California Housing and Community Development requesting that the agency issue a clarification letter confirming that the county's housing element was determined to be in substantial compliance as of March 15th, 2024, which is when the agency completed its substantive review.
And Tom is reading this to me. Again, is anyone hearing this first time? Are you like locked in and understanding what's going on?
Now, okay. The reason I don't need to go much farther than that. The reason I bring it up is there actually is news here. What is going on, and it's happening all over the county, is builders are proposing buildings, the neighbors object, and it's being fought out. And everyone is being fought out in a different way. But you cover that so often, and you get lost in the details. Here, this had to do with a bureaucratic disagreement between the local people and the state, and it was also important what the date was on the decision that was made by the state. You go into a real rabbit hole on this, and so the reporter has a problem. The reporter's problem is, how do I make this understandable to somebody who has never read this and doesn't know what the issue is? Typically, what a lot of reporters do, including me back in the day, was I write this stuff every day. I know it. It's accurate. Pay attention. And here it is, you asshole. Read it. And that's the attitude that you end up getting because you know this stuff so well. The reader doesn't, so you have to translate it into a way. Now that's as we're choosing which paper to read and what I would go to maybe Kara's newspaper at Santa Cruz Local and get the details, but she won't have what happened yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting. So I would like to go to that. All these things are go to your judgment, or you do what I do is read one paragraph in and say, I don't think I care about it. I'm going to the next story. So that I bring that up in that way because the issue for a newspaper is how do you handle what is news that not everybody is going to want to read, and those who are reading it know enough about it that they'll understand it if you present it well. That's the challenge of journalism. And I guess I bring it up mostly because that's why people pay. I mean, you pay because somebody will work out that difficulty.
Yeah.
If I'm an editor, I'll go back to the story and say, well, why is this important? What really is happening? And basically what it's a turn of the wheel of the bureaucratic process. But if people know and care about it, if I'm either in favor of this housing development or opposed to it, I'm going to have an opinion, probably not based on what the Board of Supervisors did that day, but on the entire issue itself. So you kind of have to go. We used to call the approach to that brief and deep. The brief was what was the action, deep was what's behind it. And that's asking a lot of a journalist. It really is. It takes a lot of work and experience if you want to tell the story in an understandable way. And looking toward our hope for solutions for journalism, that has to be approached. How do we get that story written so that it makes sense and is interesting to those people who care, and the other people are going to have to go to the next page to read about something they do care about. So that's the challenge.
Yeah.
In a nutshell.
Yeah, I just, I don't know how the Senate covered this. And by the way, they did the only one of all those news sources who covered this particular turn of the wheel, which is basically the project that was controversial. It's like a 6-story multifamily housing in a single family zone. And it was submitted in this loophole phase where now the local government really can't do much about it. Okay. And that's because it took them too long to get their housing element, which is a section of the general plan. That it's where you're kind of saying, this is how many people we expect to arrive in the next 8 years, and we're going to make housing for them, right? And well, they didn't make enough, and so the state was arguing for 5 months, and finally they got it approved. But in that window, because of some changes in the law, particularly because of the housing crisis since 2019, the state is not messing around with this stuff anymore. It used to be check the box, and now it is, we're going to get the lawyers on you, and the developers are going to go ahead, and they don't have to listen to any of your local changes. And so we can put in a 6-story multifamily housing with for 59 units and provide, I can't remember, it's like 21 parking spaces or 31. I mean, it's like they're not even providing enough parking. And so it's all going to go out to the street, which already is overflow in that region. So this is the kind of stuff that's going to go down. And it's important. I personally see it as important for people to understand how these mistakes happen.
So show them the
But anyway, what I wanted to
online version.
I will. But I did want to just share, because again, just going back to the reporting process really quickly, you see these numbers here, 24 through 28. Those are numbers of items for discussion in the County Board of Supervisors meeting. And there were 47 of them, okay? And I just want to share that in the old times, you had a fee. Yeah, this is what you would do. This was your job. That's why they were paying you to look at this horrible stuff that is written very, in a very dense, bureaucratic foreign language that nobody understands. And you'll notice this is all about fighting this one project in Capitola. It's not even mentioned there. Okay. So again, like that expertise, being in touch with the sources on the ground, being in touch with the people in the county, being in touch with the elected officials, that's what the reporter brings to that. Okay. And like doing your own research, you're not going to get that if you don't have all that background, is what I'm saying. So that's why you pay people to do this work. But to get on with it now, I wanted to share, KSBW covered this as far as I can tell once, and they did it at the beginning, and I think it's worth watching how they covered it. Let's see if I can get her to do it. No,
It doesn't fit. I don't care if it's something smaller, but a 5-story building, it's not to me for a neighborhood.
A plan to build a 5-story apartment complex in Live Oak is moving forward, but neighbors say it's too big for their street. The project on Capitola Road was originally supposed to be a 32-unit complex, 2 buildings, 3 stories each. Now it's a 5-story building with 57 rental units.
They're going to have a 5-story building, 60 feet tall, with balconies on every floor, looking over their properties all day long. So basically, we're not going to have privacy.
Developers are using a state law called Builder's Remedy to speed things up because the county's behind on housing.
They're providing units below income. total out of the 7. So it's, in my opinion, not even a good faith attempt at addressing the housing crisis. They're basically.
Yeah, so that actually is part of the loophole. Is in theory, you're providing affordable housing. So look at the ratio there. But again, that's all in the law. So, but I don't know what you thought, Tom. I thought it was solid. You know,
Yeah.
they gave you the highlights. But again, they're not giving you all the details about the legal.
It's easy to report on what the neighbors say. It's easy to report on what the builder says. What is more difficult is this complicated battle that's been going on between local governments and the state ever since I can remember. And right around 2020 or a little before, laws changed so that now the state has more power to approve a project in some cases than the local government does. So
Let me just.
when he's talking about the good part of the story is he's protesting this is going to ruin the neighborhood. But in order to fight it, if you want to, or to support it if you want to, you have to know what the process is. Where do you go to find out what that process is? How do I approach the state? How do I approach my local government? What is the action I can take? Or are you just going to holler about it in public?
Exactly. And here's the holler part. It's next door. So again, I'm not going to go. Good morning, all. Does anyone have information concerning a new monstrosity to be erected near or on the corner of 7th and Capitola Road? Please advise. Thanks. And you can see all the reactions there. And ultimately, the other thing I saw was.
Even had the news story did not call it a monstrosity.
No. But they do link you to the Sentinel. So this is another part of our environment now. Here's that Sentinel story that Tom started to read. And then they didn't cover it in Lookout or the Santa Cruz Local. But, you know, I got to say, when I read these articles, they made sense. And they explained all the background. They were basically, and the thing I love about, I feel like I'm doing an advertisement for Karen, but it's basically, she even has a glossary. If you don't understand all the jargon, click, here's your glossary. That is what a reporter has to do. You have to learn to speak their language, try to translate it to something. And then they even have a link, explain on what the builder's remedy is. And lower down in her story, which by the way is well written, well edited, very skillful, well-trained journalist did it. But anyway, they link you to the whole chain of stories on this issue if you really want to understand it.
The Daily Reporter probably had 20 minutes to get the damn thing in.
Yeah.
And maybe the editor didn't know what it was about. Yeah. But that's always been the Daily problem. You have to adjust for that. But I think I've always liked the Daily paper because it gets news out. The accuracy part is really a hell of a job. It really is.
Making it interesting and storytelling.
Yeah, right. And
it's hard.
Yeah.
It's actually hard work. We'll talk next time a little bit about one of the tools that I used to find all this stuff, which was AI. And I don't know how many people are starting to mess around with that. People are shaking their heads, but we can have a debate. We can talk about it. But actually, it's these models are getting really good. It's sort of snaking through the internet, scraping things up and aggregating them according to a question that you pose. Where is this? Who's been covering X or Y or Z? What is the law? When was it passed? Who supported it? I mean, I can do that research now with good prompts. I don't even know, it's a fraction of the time it would take me when I was a reporter, a kid reporter, calling people up, having to go navigate their secretary, all this other stuff. And it's just, there's a lot of promise there, I think. But yeah, go ahead.
So I have a question. When I was a teacher, we had these habits of mind that we work with our students. And we go to it, thinking about ChatGPT and how it would work. We always ask the kids, how do you know what you know?
Yes.
We'd ask them, what's the point of view?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you know what the point of view?
Mm-hmm.
And so the question, I went to AI just now because I never heard of builder's remedy.
Yes.
And I thought I was, pretty well informed. the AI thing gave me a paragraph describing what it was. And it sounded reasonably clear what the state was trying to do to expedite the building of projects that are always subject to local resistance. And, but I don't know, I would want to go deeper to make sure that I really understood that, or what the issues were, like who was pushing on that builder's remedy? How did that become policy? And who benefits and who loses and all of that stuff. So, you know, I just feel like we're faced with a dilemma constantly where it's very hard to find out what the view is and what
That's true.
He's making the point that it's hard to know what point of view and where you're reading, hard to know where they're coming from.
Yes.
And that's, I guess all I can say is that you have to be personally discerning. You have to be a little skeptical of everything that you read and say, why would they say that? That's typically what all the years at the newspaper I said, does it make sense? Does that follow? Is that who's winning here? Why are they involved? Very few people get involved in an issue because they are interested in both sides. And so, you know, I used to extend to me. I actually wrote a column on this. It was later in my career in Good Times, where I asked the question, here's the TV commercial you will never see. And it was one of the candidates sitting there and saying, my opponent is a very good person, and I appreciate what she is about. I just don't agree with her. Here's what I stand, here's where she stands. You'll never see that commercial. I would love to see one. But that's the sort of thing, figuring out where people are coming from. And that's okay to have an opinion. It's like watching an interception that is called a drop and not an interception. And you're a 49er fan, and it affected the game because the Rams did it, and you had an opinion because you're a 49er fan. That colors all our judgments, I think.
We get a couple more.
I really feel like I've kept up with all this stuff that's my downtown, because I live downtown, Santa Cruz. And I really researched, and I found this thing, and now I'm very upset with myself, that 1/3 since 2020 of everything that is sold in Santa Cruz County has been bought by corporations. I read them.
The land.
Okay, now I don't remember because I've been so involved in trying to figure out what the heck is going on with. I do understand a lot of this, but at the same time, is that true? Is that a true statement? Where did I find it? I can't find it again. Understand what I'm trying to say?
Question is, when I find a statement that, especially one that's kind of outrageous, that 100%. I think generally, if you are reading something and they say 100% of this, it's probably not going to be true. The statistics always show that something is.
Right, Rose, right? All the answers I read and thought about it, then this building remedy thing goes right square in my face because I really felt like I've been a part of it. So yes, I'm very skeptical, probably more skeptical than somebody who's never heard it.
I like reading columns that I disagree with. I find it fun.
Oh, you said, I think it's really important to see other news. I mean, I tune into Fox News every now and then just to see what they're feeding their people. It's easy to get in just seeing what we agree with. Yeah, but I think it's really important to see the other side. I agree.
We'll talk more about that next week, your strategies or media diet. I learned something from all this today on the builder's remedy. So when they had to redo, they've gone back and forth with the state to meet their requirements for affordable housing and housing in general. Well, it turns out the way they meet that is they rezone some areas, or they put some areas up for new zoning. And I dug down and I found the maps of all the areas they were adding. And yes, lo and behold, the what is the name of the country club? Seascape?
Yes.
Yeah, the Seascape
Seascape
Country Club.
Clubhouse.
Because I was looking at the address, I said 610 Clubhouse. I think I drive past that over because it sounds like the country club. And I looked at the map. And yes, indeed, it is going to be rezoned for high density housing. So would you want to know, not that someone's going to buy it tomorrow and turn it into high density housing. It could sit there for, decades and nothing will happen. But if I'm buying a house on the periphery of that place, I would definitely want to know, like, is there a chance that there's going to be whatever, 5 stories, 6 stories, 8 stories, or whatever it's going to be? Do I want my house abutting onto that? Maybe not. So I just think there's a lot of opportunity for people to learn. Fortunately, even the newspaper wasn't going to run those maps, right? You have to give people a link to really understand. What you see in the the bureaucratic stuff is they give you a lot of assessor parcel numbers. I don't know about you, but my memory isn't quite that good yet. I haven't memorized all the assessor parcel numbers. Okay.
So that's local changing the zoning, right? State's pushing the housing, but the local changed the zoning to allow.
Right.
Yeah, they had to negotiate.
But they had to report that and get approval from the state and housing element.
Yeah, so go ahead.
I guess it brings to mind the great David Broder, who was a columnist for the Washington Post, passed away a few years ago. He said instead of a newspaper should have, instead of its bylaw or its buzzword, all the news that's fit to print, he said it would be better if you said, here's the best we could do. It's accurate as far as we can tell. We probably got some stuff wrong, and we'll be back tomorrow, right on time, on deadline, doing the best we can. Thanks for giving us a shot at it. That's, I think, a much better way to look at your good
Probably
publication.
5 minutes.
It's Tom. Good. We talked about the insights here. Just sort of what we learned through this experience and where we go from here.
Well, yeah, let's sort of tee up next week. We have, I think we set the stage fairly well for what if you were to come up with something, what could we come up with? It would have the reliability of a daily newspaper and the depth of some of the things that technology gives us. And I think as we look to that, a few strategies that come back from me from my years as editor. One of the best concepts that I think we tried to do was something called brief and deep. And we didn't succeed at it particularly, but it was the goal, is that we were going to do a brief story when you only need to know a little bit, and we'd go deep when you need to know a lot. And what we were always looking for is what I would call a civic clarity. That's what if I had a publication of any sort, I would want it to be known for its clarity in its stories. And that's where that also goes with writing ability. In looking at the statistics that say writing and people don't read, it's very upsetting because I love good writing. I love being a writer. I love reading good writing. And it's sad to me that our society has made up. I don't know if there's a way to approach that. But we've got to get the written word back into our public. I really feel.
So a bit. Well,
Yeah, what do you
the
think?
newspaper.
Yeah.
As much as we love the paper, we have ink under our fingernails, and it's just not where the future is. And people just want to do things digitally, and there's so many wonderful opportunities. But we also see the scatter shot. Like one of the things we noticed on that snapshot of March 12th, I think it was, they weren't covering the same stuff except in that one case, Coral Street. And so there wasn't this sort of common narrative necessarily. It felt very niched, and you're getting like possibly into your echo chamber a little. So that's what we're kind of concerned about.
And I think everybody in this room probably agrees on a number of things, even if you don't agree with the ultimate opinion of everybody else. I think everybody here agrees that we need good information, and we need the kind of information that is available and is accurate. And how do we broadcast that out? How do we get people to agree? How do we make our mark? And that's why I wanted to take this journey over 4 weeks I've learned a lot just in my own research and also listening to all of you and reading all the stuff we've done. And Louise has found all this data. It's important. I think in a lot of ways, our public life is failing because we're not acting on accurate information and shared information, more importantly. So that's what we're here for, in my opinion.
Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you very much.
The slide deck, I don't know if Douglas sent it last week.
Yeah.
Did you all get that?
Yeah, yeah.
I
So
the links, if you want to follow up, then you don't have to.
I think we should break now. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next week.
Folks, we had, chairs and
We can agree on that.
Thank you.